Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Mullen, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Taking the Fear Out of Digital Migration, sponsored by ProQuest. Today's discussion is one in a series of sponsored webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. Free to users, these structured 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues and developments in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few features of the webinar software. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. Along the left-hand side, you will see a Q&A panel that you can use to submit questions or comments. We'll spend some time responding to your questions during the program, so please feel free to submit these throughout. And finally, please note that today's program will be recorded and all registrants will receive follow-up instructions on how to access the archived version. Our featured speakers today are ProQuest's Kevin Stair, Jim Walsh, Stephanie Ball, who is filling in for Austin McLean, and Emma Longden. Kevin Stair is the Vice President of ProQuest Sales for North America. Kevin has been involved in strategic planning and sales in the information and tech market for the past 16 years. Kevin leads a team of over 60 account managers who serve libraries in the academic, public, K-12, and government markets. Kevin's primary focus is to ensure customers understand how to leverage content and technology workflow solutions to optimize research and manage data in an increasingly dynamic market. Jim Walsh is the Director of Product Management, currently focused on media curation services. Jim has developed award-winning e-learning and research products for different market segments and continues to research the application of new technologies for improving search, usability, and discovery. Jim joined ProQuest in 2003 as a publisher and also as a director of student publishing, served as director of student publishing through 2009. Prior to joining ProQuest, Jim was the general manager for the library division at BigChalk.com and a product manager at Infonautics. Jim holds a BS in chemistry degree from Moravian College. Stephanie Ball is a digital migration specialist for ProQuest and has over 9 years of experience representing a variety of publishers in the academic research library world. She joined ProQuest in 2014, and her area of expertise lies in video preservation and discovery services, as well as the digital archiving and access program. Emma Longden is Senior Product Marketing Manager with ProQuest and has over 20 years experience marketing books and online resources within the educational and academic sectors. At this point, we're ready to get started, so over to you, Kevin.
All right, well, thank you, Laura. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. This is Kevin Stair, and welcome to Taking Fear Out of Digital Migration Projects. This is a webinar designed to offer insight to help you all make better informed decisions as you consider your own migration projects. And I have to say that we on the ProQuest team here today are very excited to be hosting this session. We've been looking forward to it, given the explosive interest in the topic for obvious reasons. Let me go ahead and change the slide here. Yeah, some of you may not be aware, but ProQuest has been involved in the digitization arena for over 70 years. From microform onto microfilm to CDs to digital conversion as we know today, including increased interest in video. And as I mentioned, we're really seeing a significant interest and increase in this topic as we partner with libraries across the globe. In fact, last year we had probably our biggest year in our history in terms of digitization. We digitized over 12 million pages, which are now fully accessible and discoverable. And that's really neat from our perspective because that's key content that was not otherwise discoverable or accessible, and it now is. And it elevates the researcher experience, and it provides greater return on investment for libraries. Not surprisingly, we are seeing a big surge of interest in this area, and all the institutional pain points that we're all familiar with, I think are, front and center here. We're wrestling with budget savings and issues related to budget, space reclamation, preservation, and shifting patron needs. And of course, these are not mutually exclusive. They're not independent. Generally, there is a confluence of these factors serving as a catalyst to seriously consider digital migration projects. And as we partner with universities across the globe, we typically see 2 to 3 of these as being intertwined and very relevant to the decision-making process. So I'm sharing a visual with you now, which we thought would help frame things out before we start sharing some of the best practices and perspectives across our portfolio related to what is typically important to libraries as we work with libraries. And on the left-hand side, you'll see icons representing workflow solutions or technologies. On the top left, there's assessment, and there's e-resource management and ILS capabilities. On the bottom left, of course, you've got discovery and accessibility, such as linking, collaboration, and funding, which are often very important, and technologies sit there. And then on the right-hand side, we have, of course, the content, ebooks, journals, dissertations, video. What's important to note here is that we invest as partners in all of these key areas. So for example, when it comes to this top area, in terms of e-resource management and assessment, we're investing in Toda Assessment and Toda. Of course, you're all familiar with the Summon Discovery Service, 360 Link and its connections to discovery, and of course, RefWorks for collaboration and our Pivot product for funding. In particular, relevant for today's session, we also invest heavily in digital migration and e-collection services, migration and preservation, and everything that we're going to talk about today. And we wanted to share this with you because it's very important for you to recognize that this is an area that we're absolutely committed to. And in particular, it's important to recognize that the work and the output that comes from a digital migration project, of course, is connected to workflow and technology solutions. So for example, once something has been digitized, being able to access it through a discovery service like Summon, being able to assess and analyze via a product like Toda Assessment, or to manage it from an e-resource management standpoint is clearly very important in terms of getting the greatest return on investment after the project has been completed. So as we transition to the speakers now who are going to share their best practices, we want to show you one last image of what is a representation of our commitment to e-collection services and migration. And typically when we partner with libraries across the globe, we typically partner in 4 key areas: digital archiving and access around dissertations. And I saw some on the survey indicating they had a great interest, not surprising there. Print to electronic conversion, digitizing historic collections, as well as increasingly video preservation. And you'll see a Black Panther down there. We just recently, as a segue to sharing some best practices, just recently engaged with UC Berkeley to transcribe over 100 hours of Black Panther video. And it's projects like that that just get our team super excited because it's interesting and you can just see the value for the library and for the researcher when we do projects like that. Okay, so let's dive into the topic of digital archiving and access. As the speakers share their thoughts, I'm going to be moderating, and I'll be looking at the Q&A section here to address questions which we do plan to answer at the end of the session today. If we run out of time, recognizing everybody's time is hard to come by, we will make sure that we follow up and answer those questions. And with that, I'm happy to introduce you to our first presenter, who is a specialist on our team, Stephanie Ball, and she is prepared to share her perspective and best practices as it relates to digital archiving and access.
Thank you, Kevin. I think we're going to start with a poll. So if any of our participants are interested, the question that we are posing is, when considering digital migration to address access, preservation, and storage issues, how important would it be to include bound theses or dissertations? Looks like we're getting some responses. I'm going to give it just a few more moments so that more of our participants can participate in the poll. We will be having
holes in between each speaker, so in between each segment area. Looks like we're split with our answers right now. I'll give it just a few more seconds. All right, it looks like it's falling right in the medium category right now is the response that we have. It's medium priority for most people. Hopefully by the end of the presentation, we'll have a little bit more swaying towards the excitement. I'm going to go forward. I'm your specialist for two programs. One, the Digital Archiving and Access Program, and then after I'm done with this portion, Jim Walsh will start speaking about the other products that I'm also working with, and that's the video preservation piece. So today I'm going to cover how we share your scholarly communication with the world, as well as an overview on our retrospective Digital Archiving and Access Program. This is what we do. We've been working, let me go forward and see if that's there. We've been working since 1939 as the recognized repository for dissertations and theses. Basically, Eugene Powers founded ProQuest in 1938 as University Microfilms International. And this is actually located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So to this day, we do this form of micro-publishing in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where we have a hands-on set of staff that does all of the editing and scanning of the documents. So Eugene Powers pioneered this business model for publishing, and we actually became the publisher of record for all U.S. dissertations in 1951. By 1939, we'd increased our storage capacity and met the criteria to be recognized by the Library of Congress as the National Repository for Dissertations. So as you can imagine, we well represented universities large and small from all around the U.S. and the globe. We have over 1,700 institutions annually contributing over 120,000 dissertations, and more recently, theses have been contributed to the mix as well. This is the global scope of dissertation dissemination programs, and here's a notable few who are actually accessing these dissertations now. So more than 99% of the U.S. doctoral producing institutions partner with us for dissemination. The scope of research, it spans from 1637 until today. So this is really equaling what's a very, very, very large library. Just to help you wrap your minds around this, that's really covering the discovery of the printing press all of the way to the discovery of the computer. We're talking about from the discovery of paper sonnets to blogs, from the invention of the telegraph to the invention of the internet. All of this is represented within scholarly communication, and we have this within the ProQuest databases. At this point, we're including master's theses for dissemination as well. This is solving the access, the preservation, and the storage issues, of course, at the university level. So students want their indexed versions at their fingertips, and we help them realize this. And we customize a program that will work for them. Some students are using this database as a starting point when figuring out what topics to write about, and other scholars are writing about things as well. They use it to see a historical view on what's already been published or covered, and they also use it to figure out how they could take what's already been discussed and update it based on societal trends, technological advances, or simply to improve upon the areas of study that they're already interested in. Really, we must pass a rigid standard to maintain this designation as the official digital off-site repository for Library of Congress. And should ProQuest ever have an event where the rigid standards are unable to be met, then an electronic copy will be actually shot to the Library of Congress for access by anyone who inquires. We're focusing on digital preservation because paper copies, however bulky, can last if preserved. However, if we switch to microfilm because it's been shown that they're archivally secure for 1,000 years, we're working towards the Trusted Digital Repository status. We're using the OCLC RLG guidelines, which is a dark archive. And to go just a little bit deeper into that, the content in light archives become available to authorized users when the original source is temporarily unavailable. Authorized users refer to libraries that have, or used to have, a subscription to the preserved content. Content in a dark archive, however, becomes available to authorized users only when a trigger event has occurred. That makes other sources, such as the original journal or publisher website, inaccessible. Examples for possible trigger events are discontinuation of publication or publisher, technical failure, or national disaster. So just give you an idea of the methods in the actual piece describing how we're going to archive your items. Let's see. ProQuest is the first stop really for the latest graduates research. We index and provide all citations for over 32 major indices. It makes your scholarly communication discoverable around the globe. Some of these subject indices include Chemical Abstracts, PsycInfo, ERIC, MathSciNet, ABI Inform, Wilson Art Index, and the Institute of Physics, just to name a few. ProQuest complements and enhances work that many libraries are now doing within their institutional repositories, and you should consider that authors' rights and wishes. Really, ProQuest leaves the debate up to the institution. The rights are protected as you deem necessary. We will say that ProQuest is a non-exclusive publisher and authors always retain their own copyright. And that's a big question right now when we're talking about archiving and publishing. We're publishing them, but even if a student chooses to publish with us, they are open to publish with any other major database. Just moving on a little bit. The program objectives, obviously we discussed this a little bit. We're going to disseminate, preserve, and enhance the access. We do have more than 150 libraries with retrospective projects for dissertations and master's theses. And we've done more than 500,000 pre-1997 dissertations and master's theses in microform. I think that we've skipped some of the slides here, so just bear with me while I find my place here. So many institutions, maybe even yours, have already had dissertations and theses on microfilm and in the ProQuest vaults already. These titles are from 1997 from microfilm. In this case, it's very easy for us to run a list to see what we have and provide these to you so you can include them within your IR. So here's what the process looks like from print. You'll send the titles to our warehouse in Ann Arbor, where editors enter the bibliographic information and MARC records are created. We microfilm every title, and the negatives are then preserved in the vaults. A digital copy can then be sent to your institution for inclusion in the IR, and a digital copy is made, although it's also available through PQDT, ProQuest Dissertations and Theses, no matter if you have a subscription or not. Here's an idea of what the MARC records will look like. Just an overview of some of the fields. I mentioned before that for these titles on microfilm in our vaults, we can provide libraries with a free customized report on the dissertations and master's theses that have been submitted to us. These reports include this type of data, and I'm going to show you on the next slide what that report would look like. If you're interested in your individual institution to see what we may have on microfilm already, this is pre-1997, then you're welcome to get in touch with us to get an idea of some of the content that may be easily accessible for your IR. So you might consider doing a pilot project with us, and here are a few examples of how to select titles. If there's thousands of titles in many different areas, maybe you'll start thinking about this question. What are your core programs for your institution right now? I'd suggest starting there so you can provide increased support for institutions' access needs. If you already have the material at your fingertips, it's a great place to start. And here's just a simple overview of the strong debate using a for-profit vendor such as ProQuest versus other low-scan vendors or even in-house help such as students. Really everyone, including the individual institutions, are able to scan, but none of them really are able to provide the core list of services that we are able to provide. Again, you get free MARC records. We're providing the OCR files, so you can add things to your IR. And really, we've got great experience. We've done this forever, and we'd love to help your institution as well. And just I'll leave you with this visual. Here's a last look at some of the participating institutions. It's a partial list, as the complete list really is too big for this slide deck. But maybe you'll see some of your peer institutions here and would like to consider working with us. This concludes my portion of the presentation, and I'm going to pass off the microphone to Jim Walsh, Director of Products for Media Curation.
Thanks, Stephanie. Again, between slides here, between sections here, we'll ask another poll question. When considering media curation projects, which elements do you consider most important? Select the one that's most important to you. Preservation, space reclamation, access, indexing, or accessibility, i.e. ADA compliance. So I'll leave this go for a couple seconds till we give people a chance to respond. Okay, I think we'll go ahead with this part. So for media curation services, how did we get started with this? People ask, where did ProQuest get into this? And the genesis really was when we looked into discovery services, there was such a small amount of video and audio items as well in the total discovery services. It's less than 0.06%, and we kind of had the feeling that that was not the real case that was out there. So why was video underrepresented? And there were a number of reasons. The formats are not accessible, the labor to do indexing and entry, and frankly, one of the biggest ones is location, in that this content is all over the university. It's not centrally located in one place. So those are some of the factors of why we thought it was underrepresented. So we started a pilot project with these 7 institutions. They were great partners in this, and we really learned a lot. And you'll probably laugh at some of the assumptions that we had going in. But the first thing we asked for was, okay, let's take the transcripts of the audio and video content you have. And they all laughed at us and said, well, we really don't have transcripts for much. And then we said, okay, we'll send the digital files and we'll get the transcripts made. And again, the laughter arose in that we don't have the digital files for everything. While they did have digital files for a lot, there were a lot that were still on the physical files. So we had to go to the physical items. So our hypothesis was that we would take automated transcription and indexing to really increase the discoverability and usability. We have a lot of experience indexing text, so we thought, oh, we can, automated text, automated transcription is really great, and we'll be able to find exactly what we need. Well, as you can imagine, that wasn't necessarily the case. This is kind of the breakout of what we got back, and we did over 600 different files ranging from the 1930s to as early as or as late as 2012. But you can see the spread here on the transcription. The interesting thing to note that things in the 50 to 75 range provided useful metadata. Above that 75, you actually got good metadata. Below that, it could be really hit or miss. So the one thing we learned was we'd have to also provide manual transcription as an option. But we found along the way that we need to offer each of these steps because everybody had different needs. It could be for different pieces of content, could be for different departments, but we need to do digitization of all types of materials, transcription, manual and automated, the metadata indexing, which is really where we started with this. We realized that we need to provide a editor and playback tools for the end users as well. And then, frankly, there were people that in the pilot asked for a streaming option because it was not easy to get onto their systems. So let me walk you through the steps a little bit of what we do. So for the digitization, we'll take most any physical format and create digital files. For the video, we'll typically make a mezzanine copy and a proxy copy, but an uncompressed preservation copy is an option as well. And for the audio, a preservation copy and a compressed proxy copy. We'll take those digital files then and use either automated or manual transcription processes for the transcript. So people will ask, well, why would you use one versus the other? I often say if it's a discovery situation where you really don't know what was on that film or tape or reel, it may be a good place to start with the automated transcription because it is significantly less expensive. On the other hand, every one of those errors in an automated transcript, when you have the caption turned on, boy, it really broadcasts those. And you can't always make the assumption that an older recording is less suitable for automated transcription. We've had some things from the 50s that were recorded well, that really came out well with the automated transcription, and we have some things that were recorded a year ago that were poorly recorded, so they need the manual transcription. A lot of it has to do with the recording quality and the clarity of the speaker. We'll take the transcript file, run it through our automated indexing systems, and come up with subjects, peoples, companies, entities, and classification codes. We then take the transcript and that metadata and create an XML documents for you, which is the real key thing here. Is this XML document comes back to you to use however you need. We do not want to make a new silo. So we want to make that XML so that you can put it where it makes sense for you in your workflow. Could that be the IR, your own stream? Want to put it. We also created a player function that aligns to other ProQuest functionalities in that it'll provide an interactive transcript, clipping and embedding, and the editor, which is for the admins to use, really controls the visibility rights, metadata, and the file information. So things that are in the player that we think are very helpful to research, the thumbnails on the timeline so you can see what's coming ahead. Search terms marked on the timeline so you know where to go in the video for your terms. and then the tabs for the transcripts or the metadata so that you can read the transcript. You know, one of the things that we found was that people were just as interested in the transcripts for these as they were the video at times, and particularly with um, long programs. You know, you don't want to have to sit there and watch all 2.5 hours of it to find the spot. So we created a clip URL which allows you to mark the spots in the transcript that you want to make a clip for, get users or yourself right back to that standpoint. From the editorial side, you can manage it by putting in collections, create summaries, adding notes. And I think one of the key ones is to edit the metadata. Again, this is automated metadata, and you know, sometimes there are things that may not fit your, you know, what you defined as a subject or the person, but you can block those from the end user, and you can also take those so that they won't be in your XML, and so that you could update that as needed and take those out. When it comes to streaming, you know, we realize most everybody's in some type of process of setting up a streaming solution, so we really want to just be able to offer options. It can all sit on our side. You know, we can actually use your streaming service to play it back, or we could use your players. It's really up to you as to what you need. But the key point in all of these is to make this content accessible and discoverable. And you know, through these 5 steps, we've certainly had a success and have had a lot of interest from institutions in doing this. Some of the things that we've seen so far, and these are actually screen caps of various things, films created by the university's workshops, speakers, the broadcasts. There's the Malcolm X one that I alluded to earlier, conferences, events, and just to remind you that audio as well, although it doesn't produce much of a thumbnail, but we do audio content as well. So these 5 services are available as needed. Some people could use all 5. Some people only need a couple, and there may to provide exactly what you need and not rope you into a longer process. That concludes the media curation portion. I'm going to turn it over to Emma Longden to talk about the P2E options.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks. So my name's Emma Longden. I'm a product marketing manager at ProQuest, and I'm speaking to you from Cambridge in the United Kingdom today. First of all, before we go into the print to electronic part, another survey. So going digital is not a new challenge in US libraries, and space reclamation is not a new topic. But if your library has yet to tackle a project, which content would you earmark as first to convert? So we'd be really pleased to hear your views on that if you'd like to share those with us for a moment. Okay, you've got some good feedback coming through there. Okay, so I'll just continue. Okay, so as we said, converting print to electronic certainly isn't new, and libraries across the globe have been doing this either in the round or in pieces and parts for some time. But nevertheless, starting a print to E project can be daunting, as there's an awful lot to consider. Sometimes it's the case that there's a key pain point that triggers a P2E initiative. For example, we were working with a customer in the university in Australia, the University of South Australia, who had to move into a new library where they had less space, and they had a need to rationalize their holdings, making print to electronic conversion an obvious solution for them. But listed on the slides here are some things that you would need to consider in a P2E strategy for your library, and we found these based on our experience of working with customers. On this slide, we're having a quick look at a survey from the Pew Research Centre a couple of years ago now, but the results still very relevant, indicating that users wanted to see more comfortable space in their library, to have more ebooks, and for more library services to move online. Nothing new there, really, things that you no doubt hear from your own constituents on a regular basis. So with print to electronic conversion, what are the benefits for you as a librarian? Why would you consider converting your print materials into electronic? Firstly, with digital collections, you're able to not only sustain the collection development into the long term, but add to the collection at the same time. So many of the large aggregated e-journals products have hundreds of titles, thousands of titles, some which you may not have had previously in print, or if you had them, you may not have had the complete run of the title back to its very first issue. So moving to digital can often be a good way to fill in gaps. Obviously, it gives you increased access to materials 24/7, 365 days a year. Also, remote access, useful where you have multiple campuses or students located distantly, or where students are partnering with other peers in other countries. And digital obviously gives you improved searching, allowing materials that may never have been discovered on the shelves to be discovered in the online environment. And all this extra usage helps you get more out of the materials that you've invested in. So physical items considered as part of P2E. Microfilm appears on there, not necessarily print, but I think we saw from some of the survey outcomes there's still a requirement there to convert microfilm in some instances. So all of these candidates ripe for digitization, which helps you move from a back office that looks a bit like this to a much more streamlined, cleaner offering for your researchers. An example here is the database we have of the NAACP papers that have been digitized and are now available online via ProQuest. So previously, if someone had wanted to access these materials, they would have had to make an appointment to go to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and hope that all the documents were there in the archive. Electronic access obviously solves that problem, and it solves other problems you will hear about from your researchers, issues that plague them with research trips, such as condition of materials, having the access to the complete collection, having the budget to make the trip, and being able to afford the time away from other duties. So that example of the NAACP is just one example of a digital collection that we have. I'm going to move towards looking at some very brief case studies, a few examples of customers we've worked with to convert print materials to electronic, and the issues and challenges they had that sort of guided them down that path. So in this case, a consultant was hired to weed through a university's print collections and determine what could be kept, what could be replaced with digital, and where those kept materials would eventually be stored. ProQuest worked with the head of collections and the consultant. We brought in our own experts on government documents to advise them on what was available digitally and what other historical collections were available to them to replace them and also to help fill gaps, as I mentioned earlier. So this library benefited from gaining new unique content and significant space savings from this situation. Moving on to another case. This one was all about space reclamation for this library. They needed to replace their printed historical periodicals with an e-alternative and turned to ProQuest for some support. We were able to provide title matching, metrics on meters of saved shelf space, and the solution here allowed the customer to get more for their money and advance their efforts on space reclamation. This customer, who was a non-US customer, was involved in a borrow and ship group. So their world involved swapping printed books and shipping printed books between each other. So just think of the time and money that effort would have taken them. So moving to a digital solution was an easy decision for them to take, making life a whole lot easier and more affordable. And lastly, no doubt numbers of you have been involved in building or remodeling existing buildings to address changing needs of your researchers. This customer was involved in a 3-year project and converted a lot of paper content, including newspapers, journals, and periodicals, to go digital and transform the space and their research experience for users. Okay, so that concludes the P2E part. So with that quick overview, I'm going to hand back to Kevin to conclude the presentation and to take any questions.
That's good. Well, let's tackle the questions. So we already have one question that came, actually two. One which I answered. There was a question related to whether we're willing to share the presentation. The answer is yes, absolutely. We'll share the presentation with you so that you can complement that with the notes you've undoubtedly taken. We may have to exclude a couple pieces of info as it relates to customer-sensitive info. We'll just have to take a look at that real quickly before we distribute it. Another question relates to copyright. The question from Carrie is, how do you manage copyright issues? I suspect this one's for Jim or for Stephanie.
I'll take it. This is Stephanie. The way that ProQuest manages copyright is that we maintain that all authors retain their copyright. We do not take any copyright over it. In fact, when we have prospective, so current dissertations from now going forward, electronically submitted via our free ingestion tool, the ETD administrator, they do have a contracted click-through that basically indemnifies ProQuest and guarantees that the copyright lies within the author forever. So really the question of copyright falls back to the institution and how does the institution deal with copyright. Most people are dealing with this because they're setting up their IRs, and the question is an institutional repository the same thing, or is it an extension of the library, an electronic extension of the library? And most institutions are viewing it as yes. It's a place for public access, public consumption, but really ProQuest maintains that all authors retain their own copyright. Does that answer the question, or should we follow up a little bit further on an individual basis?
From the media curation side, we're relying on the university to have the copyright to stream or reproduce or digitize if they're going to do commercial content. But we also have the capability within the admin system to block viewing from a number of different places. So if that's something that needs to be controlled for copyright, that's there as well.
So as a follow-up to that, follow-up question is, can you advise how to get that copyright?
Well, each individual author will maintain their copyright as soon as they create subject matter. It's theirs. But as far as is there a paper document with the copyright information, they're welcome to go to the Library of Congress and apply for copyright protection on an individual basis. It's a question of, is this a prospective dissertation or thesis from today going forward, or is this a retrospective thesis from paper? If it was a retrospective piece and we have the item on microfilm already at ProQuest, we have it in our vaults, thereby we already have a contract in place from the original, when they originally gave it to us. Looks like Carrie's, let me expand your question. How does the library get permission to stream, to share the digitized copy? Is this having, for a video, I think this is for you, Jim.
Sure. If you have to reach out to the who you bought the video from, rights, and then if you have the streaming rights for it, then we can do it. But we can't get the streaming rights for you for that. So most of the places that you acquire video from, commercial content from, should have an option to get a streaming license.
All right, any other questions? We've got some time. Okay, well, as I mentioned, we'll send out the presentation and really encourage everyone, if you've got additional questions and you're interested in exploring how what we've shared is relevant more specifically to the challenges you're facing, I encourage you to reach out to Stephanie or to Jim or to Emma for additional information. In addition, if it's just simply easier for you, each of you, I'm sure, are aware that you have an account manager assigned to your institution, and please just contact that account manager or your representative, whoever that may be from ProQuest, and we'll get you the right information. We're happy to come in, sit down, and meet with you and your staff and talk about the options and other examples that are related, very similar to maybe a challenge you're facing. Okay? All right, well, thank you, everyone. As you can see, there are lots of options here and quite a bit of flexibility as we partner with institutions across the globe to help you address the challenges associated with preservation and migration. And we really appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we look forward to hearing
applause to our panel for spending time with us today and sharing some great info. We very much appreciate your insights. Just a reminder, we have recorded today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from ACRL and Choice that will include instructions on accessing the archived version. Thanks again to all of our participants for joining us. Hope you enjoyed today's session. Enjoy the